Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, episode number 44 with Dr. Sylvester Gaskin. This is a really interesting conversation, primarily just for, I have to put it out front here, he's a major aviation geek. He has an engineering background for his undergrad, and it was just fascinating to hear just how deep his geekdom goes for that, and listening to air traffic control, which I didn't even know you could do. So it's just really engaging conversation. I mean, he shares a lot of great stuff from his story and all that he's learned, and just a lot about aviation and engineering. So really cool episode. I know you'll enjoy it. Check out all the stuff that we mentioned in the episode in the show notes. And after this brief message from our sponsor, this is episode number 44 with Dr. Sylvester Gaskin. This episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast is brought to you by Top Hat, the teaching app that makes active learning come to life. Top Hat helps thousands of professors create their perfect course. Our app is easy to use and allows you to engage your class, adopt next-generation textbooks, and run tests, all within a secure digital environment. See why faculty in over 700 colleges and universities across North America trust Top Hat to power their classrooms. Visit tophat.com/higheredgeek. That's tophat.com/higheredgeek. Start us off, just give, a brief introduction of yourself and your professional journey and how you got to be where you are today.
Okay, it's been kind of a wild ride, I'll be honest with you. I started off undergraduate school. I went to Iowa State, and I studied aerospace engineering as an undergraduate. So, the whole idea of being a geek, I'm like, yeah, I truly am. I'm a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
I got the degree on the wall to prove it when people don't believe me. And then I actually was working in the residence halls. I was a mentor for a learning community. I was trying to find work in the aerospace industry, and it just wasn't working out. And then a mentor of mine had suggested, going into student affairs. And I was like, sure, let me give it a shot. It's a master's degree. It's a free degree. I get a stipend at the deal, and we'll kind of see what happens. And so I did. I got that. I actually really liked it. My assistantship was in multicultural affairs. And I really enjoyed the work that I did. And so when I got my master's, I kind of just jumped into the workforce, kind of put, working for Boeing, to the side. And, I just started working. I worked at a small school in Minnesota for a couple of years. I dipped out of higher ed for probably 4 years after that. I was in the K-12 sector, and I was in California at the time. I was doing some after-school programming and some daytime work, and then I actually jumped back into higher ed about 2012. So I took the hiatus. I jumped back in. I was doing diversity work, and then an opportunity came to do orientation work back in my hometown. I'm from Baltimore originally, and opportunity came to go back to Baltimore to do orientation. I'd never done orientation before. Outside of like transfer orientation at a small liberal arts school was just like 25 people. Now we're doing orientation sessions that were 250, per session, 4 per week. So I did that for a few years, and then, I was wrapping up the doctorate work, and an opportunity to come to where I'm at right now at the University of Arizona. And I had never been out here. I barely knew where Arizona was, but I came out here. I actually just celebrated my year anniversary last week.
Nice. Congrats. Yeah.
So thanks. I work in the Dean of Students office. I'm an assistant dean, and I oversee student government and student activities. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. Yeah. It has been. Never thought I'd be here. Never.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure maybe there's morsels from everywhere that you've been, that you've gained, like skills or knowledge or, connections or something. But it seems, kind of still a trajectory kind of onward and upward. Now you have your doctorate, which is, amazing, just seeing more and more people doing that. But I know that was, I think something that as I started following you on social media, that was kind of the odyssey that you were on, was getting that done. So,
I actually just talked to someone today. I met him at at a conference a couple weeks ago. He's a graduate student. He's like, yeah, I'm thinking about, doing my doctorate. And part of me is like, what are you thinking, man? Like, you got no idea which one to get into, but, he talked about his research topic, and I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. Let me help you out. And so we actually talked today about, research methodologies and theoretical frameworks, and, I'm reliving my doctorate stuff, and I had to stop myself. I'm like, I feel like I'm giving my dissertation to you again, and that's not what you asked for. Mm-hmm. But like any good, doctorate student, when they're done, they don't want to talk about what they did until somebody asks them, and then it's just like, it just all comes right out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess it's good too, like just helping to make sure people are making an informed decision about it, because it's not as if you're like, no one else should do it, it's awful, whatever. It's just like, if somebody's just like, oh, I want to do it, it seems like they might be doing it on a whim. You're like, are you sure? Like, let's talk about that a little bit more. And then you're like, oh, you have a really clear idea, because I feel like that's one of the initial things that could help propel someone and always motivate them is if you have a really clear, distinct sort of like, this is why I'm doing it, this is the question I want answered, or this is the research I want to do, or it's like that can help, I guess, from my point of view, versus some people might just kind of do it to do it, and they're kind of miserable the whole time, and then they're they're not going to speak of it well, because it's like, it's always going to be hard, like it's going to be a hard thing, but so you need that like internal motivation, I'd imagine, and like knowing either like really specifically what you want to like answer, or do with it, like what you want as like your next position, or where you want to go, or something. So that's
I always mention it's a lifestyle change, because you carry it with you, like everywhere you go, it's with you. I remember there was a time where right before a busy orientation season, I went on vacation for like a week. I went to see family, I went to the beach, and dragging in a suitcase with me was all my research. It's just you just bring it with you. It comes along for the ride. And now that I'm done, I don't have anything to bring with me, and like it feels phenomenal. It's a great feeling. I can actually go on vacation and I have to worry about like I don't have to worry about I have to read these articles. It's like I can actually sit on the beach and just listen to the waves.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, I guess too, because I was thinking, and maybe I don't know if this has been your experience, like with friends, families, colleagues, or anything like that, I guess, because I was thinking that you were going to mention in terms of like carrying it with you, like that title is now like, that carries weight. Do you feel like that has kind of changed sometimes for better or worse, like how you interact with other people? And I don't know how you kind of, because some people I think kind of, they downplay it because they don't want to make it a thing, but it's also like you put a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears into this thing. So you'd want to be like, yes, I, I've earned my doctorate. So it's like, I don't know, how do you kind of come at that?
Yeah, it's funny because, there's two things there. The family aspect of it, I think, my family was pretty, I defended in 2017, but I didn't walk until 2018. So once I defended, they sent me the diploma and the transcript. Congratulations, Dr. Gaskin. That's it. But I actually got the hood in June of this year. And so my family, came to the ceremony, and I remember right after I defended, my dad kind of looked at me. He's like, I'm proud of you, but I'm not calling you doctor. And I knew it was like joking stuff like that, because I know he'd go to work and be like, yeah, well, my boy's called doctor now. Mm-hmm. And I have a little nephew. He calls me Dr. Uncle. Mm-hmm. And he was, and the funny thing about that was when I was defending, it was done through like a live stream, and he was there, and he just got an iPhone. And so throughout the dissertation, he's kind of like listening in the background, but he's sending me poop emojis during my defense. So I'm talking, I'm answering questions and stuff like that, and I look at my phone, it's buzzing. It's like, hey, Dr. Uncle, poop, 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 like, a string of it. And I'm like, I know what he's trying to do, but I'm focused on it. But I think professionally, it was kind of weird when people introduced me as doctor. And I'm like, yeah, it's all right. But when I'm in formal settings, I'll use the title. But like I said, I work in student government and student activities. I don't think there's a single student here who calls me doctor, and if they do, I'm like, yeah, you don't have to do that. Like, don't worry about it. But there have been some times where there have been some people professionally that don't show you that respect. So it's like, no, the name has changed. It is Dr. Gaskin. Yeah. But that's I do that very rarely, because it seems to me, it feels like I'm being a jerk. But quite honestly, I mean, it's funny when my spouse and I go out like to university functions, she calls, Dr. and Mrs. Gaskin, like we're like this formal setting, almost like the 50s, Like when you watch movies about college in the 50s, when the dean comes in with their spouse and they're introduced as that, she jokes about that. But when we go to an event, it's like, hey, it's Sylvester. Hey, this is your spouse. What's up? So I mean, it just kind of depends. But I just know my nephew. I'll never forget that. I think I still have those texts saved of him. Nothing but a string of poop.
Yeah.
As I tried to defend to become a doctor.
Yeah. Well, because I think that's like the perfect sort of encapsulation of like what family is, like they'll be proud of you, but also like keep you humble or just sort of like, just got to rib you a little bit. It's just like, we're just keeping you, keeping you honest, keeping you humble, but we like certainly are proud and help celebrate that moment and share it and all that. I could just imagine. I was wondering if you've experienced that yet. Of just like, sometimes people like, they come at you kind of formal, and like you always just make sure to have that qualifier of like, you can call me Sylvester. But then other people, where it seems like they're kind of like doing a little dig, like deliberately not calling you that or something, or like omitting it. So it's just like, hey, just remember, like, you just kind of professionally or sort of, respectfully kind of put them in their place just to make sure, like, you know what's going on. But yeah, it's a lot of baggage there, I'm sure, for some people, if it's just sort of like, oh, I wish I had that, or just, I don't know. It's just all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, it's a new title. It's, it's just a lot to it. So it definitely changes your life in a certain way. But, it's,
Nobody told me to be this weird. Nobody said to be this weird, but I'm living in the weirdness. I'm just going with it.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious because I just moved to Baltimore a couple of months ago with my wife Jen, and she says hi because I know you talked to her a little while ago when she was doing a little bit of her job search for the job that she got now. So so we've enjoyed living here. This is where you're from, and I'm curious. You went to Iowa for undergrad and grad, but like I always like talking with people. You have this very different major that, you thought you wanted to, pursue. And I'm wondering maybe if anything specifically from the academic side of things or the other stuff that you were involved in, it's always cool just to hear, like, specifically for you, you're helping to provide these sort of experiences for other students. Like, what did you get personally and or professionally from your own undergraduate experience that still sort of resonates with you today?
I think it's interesting because I think about it a lot. And right now there are a lot of, engineering students who kind of work with the student government, and they see that I have an engineering degree. And so there's like this natural connection of staying up all night trying to do calculus or trying to understand like a concept of physics. But I tell people I use my engineering education daily because it's not just like the material, it's the thought process. And it's the concept of, nothing is unsolvable. And that's a huge thing for me, is that there's a solution to a problem. There always is. Nothing is impossible. And so for when, I'm sitting in our dean's leadership meeting and we're dealing with a situation, and we're kind of like brainstorming a little bit, I'm just kind of sitting in the back and like that engineering thought process is just going. And when I got here, the first thing I said was, if we're in a problem solving mode, I'm just going to sit in the back and just not say anything. Like, because in my mind, I'm trying to come up with a solution. Like, just that's just the way it is, and we're solution driven. And that's not to say that other disciplines aren't. It's just that engineering mentality of, okay, here's the problem, let's go find a solution. Like, go, like snap of the fingers, let's do it. And so it's that, plus it's the idea that you want a challenge. And I think of I had some students out here. They had our College of Engineering does like a design day, where they're given a challenge and they have to solve it. So I think one group here, they were focused on designing a light aerial vehicle, almost like a mini drone, to be used. I think it was in mines, because the mining community is kind of big out here in Arizona. So how do you develop a UAV that's small enough to go into mines, but durable enough to be in some, austere conditions? And, they talked about the design process, and I remember seeing their presentation, their poster board, and automatically I'm just, I'm an aerospace engineer. I started asking very direct questions. Like, I see that you use, this type of airfoil on these two motors and this type of airfoil on the other two. What's the difference between the two? What's the coefficient of lift on this one compared to that one? Just very technical questions. And the students were like, slow down there, Sylvester. Like, this is just a presentation.
You're like geeking out too hard on him. Yeah.
Oh, man. I was like, I asked, like, which NACA airfoil did you use? This way. And, the part of the design team was like, what are you talking about? But then someone came running up who heard the question and was like, this is the one we use, and here's the coefficient of lift, and, showed me the graphs and charts. And I nerded the hell out on that one. But I think the education that I got from engineering school was that, there are complex problems that, that sometimes require some complex solutions to them, but you have to kind of dig to get to it. But the one thing I also learned, from the undergraduate school was that to not discount other pieces of information that can help. And I think that's helped, particularly in my job now and in my previous jobs, was that, I'm an engineer by training. I look at things as systems, but there's also, like in education, the human element to it as well that you have to factor in, that you really have to consider, because the stuff that you do impacts students' lives. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was hard, like probably within my first couple of years, like hard to understand that. It was like, no, this is a system. The systems can be fixed. But you also understand that they impact students and their development and, how they navigate like a campus culture. I think once I figured that out, it was like that. I mean, that was like the light bulb that went off for me. And I was like, okay, I can apply that engineering mentality, but also to understand that, it's not always going to work all the time. So, I think for me, I'm thankful I went to engineering school. I tell everybody, I said, like, if you really want to challenge yourself, like take a couple engineering classes, take a design course, or just go to engineering school. Because I think then you'll see, how problems can be solved, how complex stuff can be solved. But then also take like a human development class as well. Because I actually took a lifespan development class in community college. And that was incredibly insightful for me. That was by far probably one of the best courses I've ever taken in all of my years of school. Because now I understand what happens to people as life moves on. Combining those two together, I think has helped me get to where I am, honestly.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, just that sort of like, the yin and yang, or something, just like both sides kind of like equally balanced. Because I think, like that's definitely a lesson that I keep learning, is like kind of moderation in all things, or sort of the balance and harmony, just like things working well together, of like, because it could also be, if you were really one way or the other, just like building a team around you that helps complement the things that you do well and maybe don't do well or something. It's like, find other people with different, strengths and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's also just like a way to connect with students, and the way that you like think and interact with people and all of that, just like having that awareness and respect for your own path and the learning that you've had and the experiences that you've had and everything. So, I mean, that's a nice segue, I guess, of leading to where you are now. I imagine, obviously, you made another big move. Like, that was a deliberate decision, to kind of, go for this opportunity. So I guess just like quickly, like what, you've kind of noted, I guess, some stuff already of just like the interactions that you've had as you've been there for this past year. But like, what maybe like drew you to that job or drew you to that institution? Like, what do you enjoy most about your current work?
What I enjoy most about it, no day is the same. No 2 days are the same, and that's real. I think yesterday I was dealing with a potential software issue that a group was going to use to manage programs, and today it was we have a camp coming up in a couple of weeks for incoming students, and so working some logistics with that. And tomorrow is I'm meeting with someone about, we have a safe ride program that student government runs, and how do we secure some more money so that we can get some new vehicles. And how do we expand our services? Like I mentioned, I like the problem solving aspect of it. I like the fact that we're student government is designed to be all encompassing. We provide things that students really need, that sometimes the institution may not be able to, or they just don't see kind of coming down the pipeline. Uh-huh. Like today, I spent a chunk of time working with a colleague on, we have a campus pantry that student government oversees. And so we're looking at expanding hours, and how do we work with our College of Agriculture to, get some of the food that they grow and possibly get that to our pantry. I never thought when I took this job that I'd be handling logistics for, getting food from, our research farm to potentially give to students who are going through food insecurity. Never thought I'd be doing that. But those are the things that I really like, is that it's a challenge and it makes you think on your feet. It was kind of a surprise to come out here, like when the offer came to, hey, are you interested in Tucson, Arizona? And, my spouse and I, we had just bought a home in Baltimore. Like, the Beverly Hills neighborhood, Laurelville?
No, I guess, I'm still getting acquainted with the neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has Jen taken you to Zeke's Coffee?
I've had them at a farmer's market. Okay. I've not actually gone to like location.
Well, I lived in an area where Zeke's Coffee is.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's right next to like Maggie's Farm and Coco's. Now I just want to get on a plane and go home and get a crab cake. I will say this for everybody on the podcast: if you're in Baltimore, Coco's Pub off Harford Road, in the Laurelville neighborhood, best crab cake hands down. Don't at me. It's really good. But we had just bought a house in that neighborhood, and we were living, pretty good. And then the offer came like, hey, do you want to come to Arizona? And, we talked about it, and it's like, it has some things that I really wanted to do. I enjoy advising student government because they're in the mix on some, up and coming changing things here, on campus. And I have a great team of staff that I work with. Some of them have been here. They're UA alums, and they're from Tucson, and they love the area and they like working with students. So, it's a lot of good things that are kind of going on here. And I think on the flight back after the interview, I was like, this is going to be a tough decision. But talking with my spouse about it, it became pretty easy to make. I was in the middle of that. Once we got the offer, I had to put the house on the market, and then I had to defend my dissertation, like all within like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So, but it was a good move, and it was difficult to move away because my family's from Baltimore. They're all like in that area, so it was very difficult to move away from them. But I think they understood the opportunity was here. There's a lot of things I like about what I do and where I'm at, and I went to a land grant school at Iowa State, and so I'm deeply tied to the land grant mission of providing services and education that gives back to the people of the state and being open and accessible. And so for me, being in a land grant, like everything we do is open and accessible. Like, how does it tie back to helping Arizonans? And so here, that's with my staff and with the students, those are critical questions that I ask. Is that we're a land grant. We got people coming here from all walks of life because this is the type of school that we are. How do we make sure that we provide the things that they need for them, because they're dues paying students. And those are critical questions I get to ask on pretty much every day. So when the president comes in with a wild idea, my first question is, you're at a land grant now. How is this open and accessible to all? When the student comes in with a wild idea to have this program, like, okay, that's great, but who cannot access it? Yeah. And, you get to ask those critical questions. And so, I dig that. To me, that's to get people to start to think about that a little more. That's something I thoroughly enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it like that sort of value driven focus and everything like resonates with you, but then you're also like empowered by it and like driven by it. Just to make sure that it's sort of top of mind. Every day, like all the decisions that are made, just always keep it in mind and, act upon it.
Yeah.
To make sure that you're living it out too.
And my colleagues do the same as well. I have a great group of colleagues within the Dean of Students office that we tend to think along the same lines. And, we understand the mission. There are quite a few who are Arizona alums, and they get it. And so, that was a draw for me, was they understand the mission and the needs of the university. And so for me, having been at Iowa State and gone to a land grant and worked at a land grant, I understood the mission of it. It just felt like it really felt like a natural fit once I joined the team. So, it is very empowering. And, like I said, we think about it consistently here.
Well, then transitioning from that, so you've certainly established your geek nerd cred already. I guess, if you want to, just kind of focus, I guess, on some of the the lighter side, the fun stuff, the personal stuff. Like, 'cause I think that, part of the focus here for me, I always like, highlighting it because I think it still adds a lot to our lives, our like personal interests and hobbies and such. So, yeah, I mean, like, what do you geek out about currently? Is it newer stuff that you've just gotten into, stuff you've been into forever? But yeah, just like stuff that's capturing your attention lately.
I mean, hands down, I'm a big aviation geek. I've loved aviation and loved planes since I was a kid. My dad was in the Air Force, and he wasn't a pilot, but we were always around like Air Force bases, and so being around, driving down the flight line and seeing the jets and the helicopters and other planes around there, like to me, like even to this day, there's a huge Air Force base here in Tucson, and the flight path has fighter jets flying over campus for landing, and even to this day, when they fly over, I stop and I look up and I watch like I'm five again. Like I mean, I just get a kick out of it. When I lived in Baltimore, there was a park over by BWI Airport where you can sit there and you can just watch planes land. And so I would go there. I'm kind of dabbling in photography a little bit. So like I bought a nice little, DSLR camera and would just snap photos just like to learn how to do like nighttime shooting and sports shooting and like landscape, versus portrait and, things like that. I'm still not very good at it. I mean, if I can take a picture of like the chair that's sitting in the room and I can get that right, I'm perfect. But yeah, I mean, I've loved aviation since I was a kid. My office has a bunch of, snap together models of airplanes that I've picked up over the years. My spouse has told me not to buy anymore. She's like, get them out the house, and then I have them in my office. And she came to my office. She's like, okay, you can't buy any more. You have enough. But I have a few saved on my Amazon wish list so that when she doesn't notice, I'll make a purchase and pick it up and take it to the office.
Anybody else, like gifts, it's like I can't control what they get me. I don't know,
Yeah, like, hey, listen, it just randomly showed up, at my Amazon locker. Like, what am I supposed to do? Send it back? Right. No, but I really dig that. I think now that I'm in Tucson, like I said, there's an Air Force base here. It's also the home of what they call the Boneyard. It's the military's kind of like storehouse for planes that they don't need. And you can take a tour of the Boneyard. And I know that's something I'm just kind of work on is with the beginning of the semester. It's like, when can I like have a free weekend to take a tour of it? But you go and my understanding is that they kind of drive you around on the bus and you can take pictures and, see all the planes there. And my wife is like, just tell me the day that we're going and we'll go. Mm-hmm. But I really dig that. I mean, I'm so much of a nerd. I listen to air traffic control on my computer at work days. Just to listen to the, because I'm mathematically inclined. I like numbers. So when they say, turn direction, here's your speed and knots and even like, runway headings and things like that. I can visualize that kind of stuff. And so I like that aspect of it. I mean, I don't know if I could do the job, but I like listening to it, especially, when I'm like, it actually helps me focus. When I'm working on like emails and stuff. But I think recently newer here, now being in Tucson where there's more breweries and stuff like that, I'm kind of getting into the local craft beer scene here.
Yeah.
It's a little weird. I never thought I would when I moved out here, but now I'm becoming a bit of a snob of it. But I mean, I met when I moved out here. I moved out here like in the summer, and summers in Tucson are just brutal. It's just consistently hot all the time. But someone mentioned like, hey, listen, when it's like October, it's like 80 degrees outside, and you could sit outside after work and have dinner outside and have a beer and just enjoy it. And in part, I kind of bought into that. So, my spouse and I do that pretty regularly. But and the other thing I really nerd out about, quite honestly, is sports in general, but the NBA. I'm a huge Washington Wizards fan, and I'm probably the only Washington Wizards fan probably in Tucson. I haven't met another one. The community of us, is pretty small.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the one thing I did, and it kind of connects to social media, is the radio announcer for the Wizards, he has a hashtag on Twitter called Radio Party. And so before, during every game, he says, hey, tweet at me, let me know where you're at, and use the hashtag Radio Party. And it's a way to it's a way to connect with a community of other Wizards fans on social media. And so every game I, like, hey, so it's Sylvester, I'm here, in Tucson, Radio Party. And he'll call your name out on the radio and where you're at. So, there's a guy from the Bahamas, and there's a fan from Hawaii, and someone, in England who's, up early to listen to the game. And, there's Dr. Gaskin in Tucson. And it's a way to connect and meet up with other Wizards fans. Because, like I said, I doubt there are like many of us around here. It's particularly outside the DMV. But we actually, my spouse and I, we connect. We both tweet at the announcer at Dave Johnson. And when the Wizards were in Phoenix last year, he tweeted us like he tweeted at us like, "Will I see you in Phoenix?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah! I already bought 2 courtside tickets, man. I'm gonna be there." And we actually met the announcer, Dave Johnson, and it was actually kind of funny because he and I went to the same high school, but just not at the same time. And I'm like, here we are meeting in Arizona, and here's two guys from the same high school together. And we had a nice chat at halftime, and we're like, we follow you, wherever the team goes, and throughout the year, we tweet at it. So I nerd out about my Wizards because there's a community of people that all across the country that like this team and want to see them succeed. So. But I'm a big play nerd at heart. I mean, I don't know if there are any other Av geeks in student affairs. I haven't met any of them. When I go to NASPA, there isn't like an Av geek meetup.
Not yet.
There is,
maybe
not yet. I just put it out there in the universe. Well, I don't. Here's the one thing I really like about NASPA being in LA is that there's an In-N-Out right next to LAX where you can watch planes land and have an In-N-Out burger. So I'm like, I know, I may bring a couple Av geeks with me. We get a double, sit there and just watch planes landed at LAX.
Build some time in for that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna build that into the schedule. For NASPA. So, but it's when I tell people I like aviation, they think it's kind of cool because then they start asking me how planes fly and they think it's magic. I'm like, no, it's not magic, it's physics. It's just this is how it works. But sometimes that talking about aviation is a foray to talking about other things, particularly professionals. I try not to nerd out too much about it. I'm afraid I'm gonna draw people away, but it's kind of cool to mention. I'm a rocket scientist. I'm not a practicing rocket scientist, but my degree says that I could be one.
Yeah, that's cool though. I mean, yeah, because I think it's such a unique thing. It's still relatively new, so that's why so many people it's just like, it's kind of like unnatural that they think it's magic, and you get into one of them, for a trip, and you're just like nervous because you're just like, what is even happening? I don't understand. But it's like, the reassuring thing, I've listened to some podcasts about like airplane travel, why so many people are like anxious about it and whatever. It's like, just that like, it's still relatively new. And like when one crashes, it's so noteworthy that, everybody talks about it for like a week or more or something. But it's like, it's very rare and it catches the news and headlines because it's so rare. It's just like one of those things. And, it's like so many planes go off like every single day, and it's physics and it's science, and like, it's just that neat thing of having an appreciation for that, of just like, like you're saying, like human beings can solve problems if, they work together and like, just really think it through and test things and all that. But, it's just really cool. Yeah. That's something that's just like a deep, ongoing interest for you. And I was not aware that you could listen to air traffic control or, stuff like that. So that's a new thing that I've learned there. But and I guess it's just like, there's still just kind of a majestic kind of element to it. Just that, because I feel like a lot of airports have that where you can, watch the airplanes land or take off or whatever your preference.
I'm sure many of the listeners are going to immediately run out and start listening to air traffic control and wonder like, what the hell are they talking about? I actually was on a flight once where you could listen to air traffic control through like the entertainment system on board, and the pilot was like, "Hey, listen, we're flying here. If you turn it to this channel, and if you have any idea what we're saying, I'll buy you a drink." and people were just like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And I remember a flight attendant walked by, and I said, "Listen, you might want to tell the captain he owes me a drink when we land." And she kind of laughed and chuckled off. She said, "No, I'm serious. Like I will listen. I will know exactly everything they're talking about." And she was like, "Why?" I said, "Well, I listen to this at work, like on the regular." And she was like, she kind of looked at me like I was like, "Well, okay, calm down, nerd." Like, she's like, "That's really nerdy." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, you got to nerd out over things. And this is the one thing that I do nerd out over." And it's kind of cool. I mean, I think my nephew, like I said, he gets nervous about flying. And so he'll ask me questions about stuff, and that calms him down a little bit. I know when I travel with my spouse, sometimes she'll ask me questions like, "Why is this and why is that?" And I'm able to answer it. It's a cool, unique skill to have.
Yeah. Or like, because I think there's parts like that manifest in different ways of like, oh, like what did you want to be when you grow up? Or like your undergrad major or some, involvement that you had maybe like growing up or something like that's always just going to be a part of what you are. Like, you're always going to have that. Like you learn so much about it in school and all that. Like I always thought when I grew up, for reasons I don't know, but like I always thought I was going to be like an author. Like that was the answer I would use for like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then it's like, yeah, I've been doing, kind of like freelance writing and all that. So it's sort of manifested in that way. But yeah, it is funny that like that story about the flight you're on, because it's like part of it's just like, it's all been leading to this. Like,
yeah. It's all been leading to a free can of Coke after a flight to Chicago. But, no, it's cool, and it's cool to be, when I go like plane spotting, wherever I travel, I take my camera and I do some plane spotting. And it's cool to meet other folks who just have that passion for it as much as you do, or they have a passion for like photography. As I go out there and I take pictures, you meet other folks who do the same thing as you, and they just nerd out with you as well. Or I remember one time I was plane spotting at BWI, and I was taking pictures, just start my little rinky-dink camera, and sat right next to a guy. He had his telephoto lens and had an air traffic control scanner with him, and just sitting there just enjoying it. I'm like, what? That's the life. That and my spouse was like, that's kind of a cool thing to do. So like you find a passion, you find something you want to nerd out with, go for it.
Yeah.
Full force.
Yeah. Love it. Well, I guess then, so one of the things that you listen to is air traffic control stations and stuff. But yeah, I guess anything else that you're consuming, specifically like pieces of content, anything that you're like reading, watching, and or listening to that you'd want to recommend that we can include in the show notes.
Wow, that's a good question. I think I think I dabble in different things. Just depends on my mood. I think the fact that the semester's ramping up, I haven't watched a lot of TV. And the one thing I try to consume, particularly summers, I'm a pretty voracious reader. I try to read as many books as I can. And I think over the summer, I read a few that were really interesting to me. I'm kind of into like history, but more like recent history. So I read, and you've been in Baltimore. I read the oral history of The Wire. It's a book called All the Pieces Matter. I forgot who wrote it, but I heard the title. I saw it like pop up on my Twitter feed, and I pre-ordered it immediately. I was like, I got to get this book, and I read it, and I think I read it on a 3-hour flight. Like I just tore through it. It was amazing. I read W. Kamau Bell's kind of biography. Him growing up in Berkeley and becoming a comic, and now doing his TV show on CNN. And my wife and I have seen him on stage a couple times. He's probably one of my favorite comedians. I've been consuming a lot of comedy specials on Netflix. So I've seen John Mulaney's new one, Hari Kondabolu's new one. I think is amazing. And I just have to look and see. I just heard that Hassan Minaj is coming up with a new show on Netflix. And so I consume that. If it's not a baseball game, it's something on Netflix. I've actually, the other thing I've been watching on Netflix is Last Chance U. on Netflix, and I the first 2 seasons were in the school in Mississippi. I'm like, it's okay. The coach is kind of a jerk. The third season, it's a small school in Kansas. The coach is a white guy from Compton, California. My wife grew up in Compton, and so she's like, I gotta watch this with you, And so when the coach says something, she goes, "Yeah, that's definitely LA. That's definitely California." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of get it." She goes, "No, trust me. What he said right there is definitely California." I'm like, "I'm not doubting you on that one."
Yeah.
So, and like I said, it's for now that I'm no longer a doctoral student. I can actually unwind and do some of these things. I for a minute I was kind of into different podcasts. So I listened to there's a higher ed one, the Committed Project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I listen to that regularly. Outside of higher ed, I do I listened to the American Fiasco podcast about the I think it was the 97-98 U.S. men's soccer team.
Okay.
And it's curated by one of the guys from Men in Blazers, and that's another thing I'm kind of nerding out now, and I think a lot of people are, is soccer in America. Mm-hmm. But I listen to that, and actually, I'll tell you this: where my building is to where my parking garage is a good distance. It's probably close to like 3/4 of a mile, and it's hot during the summer, so like I have to like mentally prepare to make the walk, and you have a big water jug, and so what I started doing was just putting on a podcast and just making the walk. Uh-huh. It actually made the walk a whole lot faster. Like you're just listening to the podcast, and so. I listened to that. There are a couple aviation podcasts I listened to, talking about, Boeing is designing this, or here's the new sales market, or, the Farnborough Air Show was recently, and Boeing v. Airbus, like who had the most orders, who had the most unique orders. Like I said, I had to make that walk in 100-degree heat. I might as well make it interesting with something.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just like, your brain's just like, it's really hot. I just don't want to be hot anymore. Like, why is it so hot?
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to make it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to make it to the parking garage, and then like it's like putting one foot in front of the other. But that American Fiasco one, like it made my walks a whole lot shorter.
Oh, that's great.
And when I got to the car, I just kept listening to it. The Committed Project ones are exactly the same way. Once I start going, like, I start listening to it, but next thing you know, I'm in my car. Yeah. I'm ready to go. So it's those are the things that I've been consuming a lot of. And probably as the days get longer and, the walks can be shorter here, and it's not so hot, just stuff to like help me decompress, the day. So,
yeah, very good. So we'll find that stuff and link it out in the show notes. Folks want to check it out.
But if people want to listen to air traffic control, there's liveatc.net. That's the URL, and they have an app. I think it's both on Apple and on Google Play. Like I said, I'm sure many of your listeners are going to, rush to it as soon as they hear it. But
you just had like curiosity, just like I just want to like hear what it's like.
Yeah, it could be some interesting stuff. I know there's been like a lot of storms and rain in the Baltimore area. My family's told me like it just will not stop, like thunderstorming and raining out there. And so I listened to air traffic control in Baltimore, and it's interesting to listen to how they navigate. All these planes, like, I got to get out of here. And they're like, well, there's a thunderstorm overhead. Like, you're not going anywhere. Like, it's a good example of stress management and human interaction. Oh, man. It could do a case study on that, like, anytime.
Yeah. Like, if you had, like, an algorithm that could, like, analyze sentiment and, like, I don't know, just, like, something. Because it's, like, it's a high-stakes things. It could be very stressful. Like, a lot of people, like, want... like air traffic control needs to keep everyone safe, and like pilots and all that. They're managing people who want to get their flight to where they need to be and all that. It's a whole thing. But we'll wrap up here. Just end our episode on an optimistic note, as we always do. So, what is something or things that you are looking forward to in your life, job, and or the world?
The school year is going to be starting here within a week and a half. And so, like, professionally, I think we've got a new group of student leaders coming in. They're really motivated to do some positive change on campus. I think they've really kind of bought into the idea of service to all students. and how do they, not only be successful themselves, but kind of tie back into that Land Grant mission of service. And so I'm really excited. They're starting to trickle back in. We have our camp for first year students next week. The campers come in on Sunday. And so it's going to be exciting to see, a group of incoming students and their families excited, to like what may become anew here and the opportunities that they have for them. So I'm really I know a lot of people say like the beginning of the year is stressful. I completely get it. Everybody's coming back and, we're, the train's going to leave the station, but I actually really enjoy it. I mean, I really enjoy August and the beginning of the year because that means that it's back to work.
Yeah.
It's back to what we do. It's how we do. So, and I'm optimistic for the year. I think you always have to start the year optimistic. If you start the year like, oh crap, here we go again, it's never going to go well for you.
Right.
But I'm optimistic for, the good things that are going to come out this year. So.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Always a good reminder and perfect place to end the episode here. Just really appreciate all that you've shared and you making the time for the show here. And just have a good rest of your day and a good weekend coming up here.
Yeah, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Tell Jen I said hi.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you later. This podcast is a proud member of the Connect EDU Podcast Network, bringing together diverse voices and thoughtful discussions to the higher ed community. Check us out online at connectedu.network or on Twitter @ConnectEDUPod. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Higher Ed Geek Podcast.